I want to welcome you all today to our first ever and hopefully annual webinar related to supporting our undocumented students. As many of you know, April 7th has been designated as National Institutions Coming Out Day, which gives us an opportunity to come together as a community of institutions to address the issues related to and to share ideas and advocate for our undocumented student population, who, as you know, face sometimes insurmountable challenges. I would like to welcome the many different representatives from the various universities and colleges throughout the United States, including AJCU, Boston College, Canisius College, College of the Holy Cross, Cristo Rey Atlanta, Fairfield University, Fordham University, Georgetown University, Loyola University Chicago, Loyola University New Orleans, Rockhurst University, St. Joseph's University, St. Peter's University, Santa Clara University, Seattle University, Spring Hill College, the University of Scranton, University of San Francisco, and Xavier University. If I've overlooked anyone, please bring it to my attention. But thank you so much, everyone, for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today as we welcome 4 distinguished panelists who will be talking about their research and the work that they currently do to support our undocumented student population. I'd like to begin by first introducing our first presenter, which is Melissa Kwan from Fairfield University Center for Faith and Public Health and Public Life. Melissa Kwan is the Director of Service Learning at Fairfield University, is Associate Director of the Center for Faith and Public Life, and Director of Service Learning at Fairfield University, where she has worked since 2002. As part of her work with the center, she helped to lead a collaborative research project from 2010 to 2012 on the issues facing undocumented students in higher education, with a particular focus on Jesuit higher education. She has also collaborated with colleagues on Fairfield's campus to use the research findings to improve support for undocumented students at Fairfield University. Melissa, thank you. I welcome you, and I turn the microphone over to you.
Very much, and thanks for the opportunity to participate today. So I'll start just by providing a brief overview of the research project that we conducted, and then share a bit about what we've been doing at Fairfield University as a result of that research. So the Immigrant Student National Position Paper was the result of a 2-year study conducted by researchers at Fairfield University, Santa Clara University, and Loyola Chicago University. And I suspect a few of those folks are probably on the call. And we also had 3 collaborating schools, St. Peter's, Loyola Marymount, and Detroit Mercy. And there were 2 major phases of the project, the research and white paper, which was followed by dissemination of the research findings. I think I'll spend most of the time talking about the research itself and some of what we're doing at Fairfield, but happy to answer any questions about the dissemination also. So the overarching purpose of the study was to gain a deeper understanding of the situation of undocumented students at U.S. Jesuit colleges and universities and the institutional practices that affect those students. So we looked at both legal and social issues. The data was collected through an online survey focused on the practices and attitudes on Jesuit campuses towards undocumented students. Surveys were distributed to 200 staff members across the 28 schools, and those were selected by the presidents of those institutions. And we're basically looking for the people who were most likely to come in contact or to somehow serve as support people to undocumented students. So we had folks from financial aid, admissions, faculty, diversity offices, campus ministers, and so forth. So we distributed 200 surveys, and 110 were completed and returned. The researchers on the team also conducted in-depth interviews at 6 campuses. So interviews were conducted with undocumented students as well as faculty and staff that work with undocumented students. And a small number of interviews were conducted with people who we identified as gatekeepers. So for example, guidance counselors at a couple of high schools that tended to refer undocumented students to one of those 6 campuses. And in a couple cases, we interviewed parish priests. And then finally, the legal research team conducted an analysis of the legal landscape, just clarifying legal issues, particularly as they relate to higher education and private higher education. And then we also provided up-to-date information on policies as they were varying by state, which was happening almost on a daily basis at that time. So our legal team was pretty busy updating that. So just to share a couple of the major findings. From the surveys, we found that 75% of the staff strongly agreed that supporting undocumented students fits with the mission of Jesuit higher education. 51% strongly agreed that campuses were welcoming. 64% strongly agreed that campuses could do more. And then from a combination of the survey data as well as the interviews, we found that one challenge was that most campuses had no consistent or transparent policy regarding undocumented students. So it led to kind of a lingering perception among undocumented students that campuses were not welcoming, or that they would not be supported, or they wouldn't know how to find support on campuses. All of the undocumented students interviewed found the admissions process really challenging, from application all the way through graduation. Throughout their 4-year experience on campuses, they were worried about who can they trust if they were to reveal their status and slip. Whoops, sorry about that. To the wrong person. How would it impact their family life? Would it put their family members in danger? A major barrier for undocumented students, which won't come as a surprise at all, is finance and financial aid. They cannot receive federal aid, as we all know. They can't receive federal work-study stipends. State aid is limited depending on where the student resides or goes to college. And so just a quick note on this, interestingly, just this week alone, I was contacted by 2 Fairfield University alumni who are currently mentoring high school students who are undocumented and who have been accepted to Fairfield University. Both received scholarships from Fairfield University, but neither were enough, and so they had contacted me asking how they could advocate on behalf of the students that they were mentoring to try to get them more aid. And in the process of exploring it with our admissions office, I learned that neither of these students had completed the CSS form, which is what Fairfield University, I'm sure many others, use to analyze financial need. And I think the assumption on the part of undocumented students is that they do not qualify for federal aid, and so they cannot or should not complete the CSS. And depending on who their mentors are and how open they are about their status, they're probably not getting that recommendation or that guidance on a wide basis. And I know that United Redream has some great resources on navigating the admissions and financial aid process, and so I always refer students to that. So back to the research findings, the students interviewed reported experiencing discomfort in class if the discussion turned to immigration. So they felt uncomfortable, they felt hostility directed towards them. And I'm sure Fairfield is not alone in experiencing this quite a bit this year on our campus amidst the divisive and hateful political rhetoric that's taking place right now. And among the staff surveyed and interviewed, they agreed that one of the large barriers facing undocumented students is post-secondary employment. Without lawful immigration status, what job options are available to them? And then how do we guide students along career paths when they're on our campuses? The paper also included a second set of recommendations, and most of them really related to increasing awareness, education, and professional development on campuses to improve support systems for undocumented students. So for example, researchers recommended providing training for admissions staff so that they can understand and help undocumented students through the admissions process. To train student services support staff to understand the challenges undocumented students face with regard to finances, feeling anxiety about their family confidentiality, and privacy. to identify legal resources at the university and in the community that can provide counseling for undocumented students. And then the researchers also recommended making support systems more transparent so that undocumented students know where they can go on campuses to ask the questions and find the resources that they need. And I should say that all of this is available on our website, which is www.fairfield.edu/immigrant-student. And so the full report, along with several summaries, can be found there. And you can forgive me, the page is a little bit outdated, but it's on the to-do list to update. So just to spend a few minutes talking about what we've been doing here at Fairfield University, and I know many other campuses have also been taking strides to support undocumented students, and so how we tried to apply what we learned from the research. So I think we've done a pretty good job of increasing awareness across campus, and we've increased our capacity through professional development and training. We've shared the research with groups of professionals on campus, from human resources to admissions to financial aid. We've held workshops on DACA for students and for professionals on campus. We created a small scholarship fund specifically for undocumented students that has been made possible by a few alumni and private donors. We regularly refer students for legal counseling on issues like DACA, path to citizenship, and advanced parole for students who want to participate and study abroad. Our Director of Residence Life has created a support group for undocumented students, and the Office of Student Diversity Programs has set up a book loan program for this. We haven't created that transparent network of support so that students, undocumented students applying to or enrolled at Fairfield University can easily navigate through the system and find the people that they that are here to support them. You know, I don't think any student could go to our website and see, this is where I can go for support, or this is what I need to do, or I need to complete this form or that. It's still very much, although we've increased our capacity significantly, I think it still remains very much a word of mouth network. And one outcome that we had hoped to come out of the research project that hasn't really fully come to fruition is more collaboration and information sharing across the Jesuit campuses on how to improve the support system. So if you do go to our website, you'll see that we have, you know, a page for resources and a page for emerging practices, where we had imagined kind of compiling a list of things that were happening so that we could learn from one another. And that hasn't really come to fruition fully, but something that could still be worked on. And then finally, I'll just close by saying that we did have the opportunity this year to expand on the white paper. And so with the leadership of Terry Ann Jones, who is a professor of sociology here at Fairfield University, and Laura Nichols, who is a professor of sociology at Santa Clara University, they've co-edited a book that will be coming out from the Fordham University Press, I think early this summer, entitled Undocumented Students in College, Student Experiences and Institutional Responses in a Climate of National Ambivalence. So that'll also kind of capture the full scope of the research that we did. So I think that's all I have to share right now, and I'm happy if it's okay with the organizers to take a few questions now. I do have to jump off the webinar a little early to run some team building activities for third graders at my daughter's school, but I'm also very happy to kind of connect with people over email or phone at any time.
Yeah, so we have about 5 minutes built in. If you have questions for Melissa, please feel free to ask. Melissa, what's the name of the paper again? The second paper that's coming out?
The name of the book is Undocumented Students in College, Student Experiences and Institutional Responses in a Climate of National Ambivalence. I see a question in the chat box. Is there any risk to students in completing the CSS? I don't know that I feel like I have the professional experience or knowledge to answer to that, but my understanding is that there is not. And I saw a question about the book loan program. That was, right now, it's internal funding. So for example, my office and the Student Diversity Office, we just kind of pulled some of our money together to get it started.
was hoping there was some grant that was
There might be. There is a grant program right now. I forget. I don't know if it's through United We Dream or another organization, but again, I can throw it in the chat box in a minute or two. But there is a matching grant program available right now for campuses who want to offer some sort of financial assistance to their students. And so you can apply for a grant. I think the minimum is $5,000 up to $50,000. And as long as you can match whatever you're asking for, you can apply for the grant.
Okay, so I will turn it back now. On this end, we're going to move forward with our next presenter, who is Eva Martinez-Paulus. Eva Martinez-Paulus was a first-generation student who attended middle and high school in Crystal City, Texas. Eva earned her Bachelor of Arts in Community Development and Leadership at Alverno College and a Master's in Public Service and Leadership at Marquette University. She currently serves as the Director of Intercultural Engagement, where she oversees student diversity and inclusion programming, LGBTQ Resource Center, and a student support program for underrepresented communities. Prior to joining the Student Affairs team, Eva worked in Marquette's Office of Admissions for 8 years in the role of Assistant Dean and Multicultural Community Outreach. Eva's work in admissions focused on recruiting bright and talented Latino students. Eva has over 9 years of experience working with undocumented students in the area of recruitment and retention. Just recently, Eva was key in implementing the Dreamers Gala to raise funds for scholarships for undocumented students attending Marquette University. Eva, thank you so much. Welcome to our webinar today.
Okay, so my work in admissions, we began the process for making the process easier for undocumented students by, first of all, changing the application process. So at this point, I am happy to report that in the area of admissions at Marquette University, the process is a lot better than how it was, I would have to say, 9 years ago. Students are able to apply, they're able to let us know of their status in a confidential manner during a one-on-one meeting with a bilingual counselor if the family happens to be from a Spanish-speaking background. Also, in the Office of Admission, Marquette University was one of the institutions that provided scholarships for undocumented students. And even though those scholarships didn't particularly state that they were for undocumented students, many of those students were applying to the scholarship. One of the first scholarships that we developed was the Urban Scholarship, which provided a full tuition scholarship for any student that met the criteria. Because I was in charge of recruiting the Hispanic community in the Milwaukee, Chicago area in Texas, I was able to really promote this scholarship to undocumented community all over. So a lot of the applications that we received for this scholarship came from undocumented students, those students who had the really good ACT test scores, the SAT, the GPAs, leadership, and community service, and all of that. Also, a couple of years later, I would have to say around 2012, we worked together in financial aid to create institutional grants for undocumented students, which we didn't have. And we felt that that was a huge obstacle for students coming to Marquette. So currently, Marquette offers institutional grants for undocumented students. I know in a couple of years ago, while I was working with a student, one received, in addition to academic-based scholarships, also institutional aid. So the tuition for the entire 4 years was paid by Marquette University. However, some of the students also do desire to live on campus, so that's one of the biggest obstacles that we have, trying to figure out how to best support students once they come to Marquette and they desire to live on campus, how we find scholarships to cover that additional $10,000, $11,000 per year to be able to stay on campus and live on campus. In my work in student affairs, also we have been working very closely with Residence Life. Some of our undocumented students have become residence hall assistants, which has alleviated the entire obstacle of room and board for those students. So I know for this upcoming year, we have at least 4 undocumented students who will be residence hall assistants at Marquette, which is outstanding. I would have to say that 5 years ago, we didn't have that. We didn't have a process to be able to encourage those students to be RAs and to be a part of the community. So now we do have that, which is very nice. So admissions, recruitment, I think that's working out very well. We do still face a little bit of a challenge with financial aid, but I think some of those obstacles have been removed in the last 7 years or so. In the area of retention at Marquette, which is my area within student affairs, we work one-on-one with many of our undocumented students. I pretty much know pretty much almost every undocumented student on this campus. So I have served as the point person for the last 9 years for undocumented students and their families as well. We've also created a group called the Dreamers Group. And this Dreamers Group meets bi-weekly, and it is run by our graduate assistant, Myra Rodriguez, and she has done an outstanding job in running the group. So right now we have about 10 active undocumented students in the Dreamers Group. And this group is really designed to be a support system, to be able to sit with the students, to talk about the obstacles, to share all the happy moments, all the things going on in the college aspect. But then also it serves as a group to really talk and discuss social justice issues, particularly how undocumented students view Marquette University, and providing feedback to the entire division of student affairs. So students are also empowered to not only meet and support each other, but also give us feedback and challenge the administration to create programming and additional scholarships to better support that population. So we have done a good job in that area, meeting one-on-one with students. We also do a lot of outreach. Myself and my staff, we are all over campus and also in the Milwaukee community. And once we know a family is undocumented, we're able to refer that family and also refer those students to the appropriate office. So we're able to do a lot of the outreach. We understand that not every student, undocumented student, will be coming through our doors. So we make it a point to go out and really and reach out to them and find those students, because we do understand all of the obstacles that they face on this campus. We also created what we call a book loan program at Marquette, and it was funded by the President's Innovation Fund. So we have set aside a very nice budget to purchase books, and also to provide a library for all students, but particularly undocumented students, to be able to check out books for the semester or borrow books for the semester, or even for an hour. And that book loan program has been very successful, and we have served at least 6 undocumented students in the process. So we were able to purchase some of their books and also to borrow some of their books, calculators, and so on. So the book loan program has been successful, and it is a growing program because not only undocumented students are taking advantage of that, also other underrepresented communities. One of the biggest things that we do in our office is networking. We make sure that we are talking to different departments every time we have an opportunity about how to better serve or underrepresented populations. I know that for me, when undocumented students face an obstacle and I meet with them one-on-one, I am really good at making sure that I'm calling the chair of the biology department, or I'm calling the chair of the biomedical sciences, or whatever the case may be, to ensure that I am not the only person that is working with the student, to engage the broader campus. I think that's really important, that even though the diversity offices, we tend to do a really nice job working with the students, but it's really the responsibility of the entire campus to be able to become educated and aware of the obstacles for undocumented students and other groups as well. So we're able to advocate for students, able to network with different departments and making sure that we are implementing best practices and that we are helping students and removing barriers rather than adding barriers to their experience. So what else? Career Services at Marquette. The Office of Career Services has a really nice system to help students navigate employment after college. In fact, the Director of Career Services at Marquette, she has created a very nice website where students can go and get all of the resources they might need for a career after Marquette. And we meet on a monthly basis to talk about different aspects of how things are working out, or what can we do better, and so on. But I know that for Career Services, it has been a great resource for our students to be able to go into the website and also to be able to meet with some of their career counselors and making sure that they are getting the assistance they need to be employed after college. Also the alumni networks, because I've been at Marquette for almost 10 years, I have developed a solid network with the undocumented alumni here. In fact, we just held our very first Dreamers Gala at Marquette to fundraise for scholarships for undocumented students, and our keynote was Marisela Aguilar, who is an undocumented alum from Marquette University. It was an outstanding Dreamers Gala, and the Dreamers Gala was served as a platform for education and awareness, but also for gathering of many of the undocumented alumni that have graduated from Marquette. It was just outstanding to see a lot of different professionals coming over and donating. And the Dreamers Gala was also in collaboration with the student organization, YES, which is Youth Empower for the Struggle. And YES and Intercultural Engagement, we took the lead in making sure that it happened. And that more than just raising money, we also wanted to make sure that we educated the campus. So all in all, we raised over $24,000 in one night, which was really, really nice to see that. I think like the best part for me is that now the University Advancement at Marquette is aware of some of the issues of undocumented students, and now they are also aware that there's an affinity group of alumni and community members that really care about the experiences of undocumented students, and they want to donate and they want to create opportunities for the students. So that was very powerful to see, not only for me but for the entire campus. Also at the Dreamers Gala, we had a table from the Jesuits at Marquette University, and that was just very powerful to see. They are behind the Dreamers Gala and behind a lot of the efforts that we have for undocumented students here. This last year has been a year for education at Marquette around the immigration area. We also had Dr. William Perez, who is one of the leading national researchers or scholars in the area of undocumented students and immigrant youth. And Dr. Will Perez was just here in March, and it was outstanding. A lot of people came out and attended his session. We also hosted a lunch with community stakeholders off campus, because we want to make sure that when we talk about undocumented students, that is not just Marquette University, but that we also engage the community and also other institutions to ensure that that we are working effectively with the students, that it's just not a Marquette thing, that is a national thing, and that we all should work together to enhance the lives of the undocumented community. So this last year was really great at Marquette. We also hosted many different panels. We hosted a panel with undocumented students. We have an undocumented student on campus who has been serving in a lot of different panels and creating awareness. And I think it's really powerful that not just the administrators are talking about that, but they get to also hear a testimony from an undocumented student. I think that's powerful. So yes, we also work very closely with a lot of the nonprofit organizations and the high schools around the area, around the Milwaukee and Chicagoland area, to make sure that we are providing the best the best resources for students, knowing the obstacles and everything that comes with being an undocumented student on the college campus. So I think that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Eva. We'll open up the floor to questions at the end of the session. Now I'd like to move forward with the presentation from Michael Zampelli, SJ, who is the Paul Locatelli University Professor in the Department of Theater and Dance in Santa Clara University. He is about to finish his 6-year term as rector of the Santa Clara Jesuit community. As rector, he oversees the Alberto Hurtado SJ scholarships for undocumented students given by the Jesuit community. The scholarships support the full cost of education for students. In the last 15 years or so of its existence, the program has supported between 3 and 10 students per class, 12 to 40. Greg Callahan, his assistant, is the administrator of the program and deals with budgeting, formation of scholars, university services, etc. So welcome, Michael. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to listening to your presentation.
So Greg and I are actually going to tag team a little bit on this since we work pretty closely together on the scholarships. So the fund that we use to sort of support our undocumented students has been in existence since the late 1960s. So when the Jesuits separately incorporated from the university, they started a scholarship fund then, to which they would contribute every year from the surplus of the community. So when there would be a surplus at the end of the year after community expenses had been paid, they would give that money to this fund that was held in the endowment of the university. So that has grown to an appreciable size, and really in 1999, I guess, was the year that the community decided that the scholarships, because from the very beginning, the scholarships were supposed to be given to the students who were in greatest need. So the community decided in 1999 to actually dedicate the proceeds of that fund every year, the draw from that fund, to the support of undocumented students, because they were in most need, because they had no other options. There was no other way for them to pay for anything with regard to a Santa Clara education. So since 1999, the Jesuit community, as its own sort of entity, has been supporting undocumented students. It provides for a full SCU experience, which means it's the cost of attendance, really. So it's tuition, it's room and board, it's what they need for travel. And so over the years, that has gotten more and more per person, right? So as the tuition has increased, so has all of the expenses with regard to books, et cetera, et cetera. So it sort of, that's the reason why there's a kind of variation in the number of students that we can support per year. For a long time, really, we were the only show in town. So in some ways, when the admissions office would flag undocumented applications, which they did by a kind of, I mean, they knew who the undocumented students were, and they had a person that was sort of connecting with them. We would have really upwards of perhaps 60 of applicants from 4 to 6 scholarships, really. Because they would be about 40 or 60 people accepted per year. That's changed now, I think, because there are so many more, there are more opportunities elsewhere as well. Our applicant numbers actually have gone down in terms of the scholarship. But it provides the full cost of the experience. Basically, we select them. Everybody's story is compelling. So I have to say, selecting them, there's a group from the Jesuit community and current Hurtado scholars that actually participate in the selection process. And really what we look for is fit. Since they're already admitted to the university, we don't have to worry about whether or not, you know, they've already been judged academically worthy and academically that they'd be able to somehow succeed here. So really, it's a very difficult process in some ways because so many of them have compelling stories. They all have compelling stories. So it's really about trying to figure out if the fit is right and if this would be a place where they would flourish in. But the Jesuit community participates in those interviews. The current Hurtado scholars participate in those interviews. And the experience of the interviews themselves has proved to be a pretty significant community building experience, especially in those years when people were loath to disclose their status. Oftentimes, this was the only time for those interviews. We would actually invite more people than we could possibly even think of accepting, partly because it became a formational moment for them, that it was the first time that they were together, oftentimes with so many other undocumented students, and they were able to share information, share experiences, and they developed a kind of a network among themselves, even of the people who didn't have the scholarship, because of those interview days. Because, you know, back in the day, it was the only time that they ever disclosed to anybody else in a group what their status was. So we support now between, you know, we're around 3 to 5 students per year. And we have a number of allies on campus that sort of help to work with us. So certainly campus ministry. We have the LEAD Scholars Program, which is the first generation college students. We work very closely with the director of the LEAD program. All of our students usually are in LEAD when they first come. Academic advising and learning resources. They are very much involved with, help us monitor grades and make sure that we're up to speed on what's happening with the students before it gets to a degree that we can't do anything about it. Admissions, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion here, counseling and psychological services. So we have a lot of housing and residence life. So we have a fair amount of cross-campus support. But until recently, the Hurtado scholars are not the only undocumented students on campus. However, they are the bulk of them. But some students make it here and fund their education by other means. So occasionally we try to reach out to them as well, only so that they can be part of the community. But recently, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion is trying to systematize more of their outreach to undocumented students. We've been doing it really in some ways ourselves for the last 15 years. And I think now the university is trying to sort of consolidate its efforts and see whether or not we can do more from a centralized location in terms of seeing to the needs of our undocumented students. Greg Callahan, who's my assistant, actually administers the program, the scholarship program. And so I thought maybe he could talk about some of the practicalities. Do you want to talk a little about that?
Sure. So like Michael said, we do cover the full cost of the Santa Clara experience and the Santa Clara life. So we pay for tuition, room and board, student health insurance. We provide for books and a modest amount for personal expenses and travel to and from campus. We have students from the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, but we also have students from Alabama, from Connecticut, Boston area. So we have students from all over the country. One of the things that we try to do is to build a community of scholars here in the Jesuit community. So every Hurtado attends a fall retreat as a group. There are 16 of us this year, 16 students. So we have a retreat in the fall, a couple nights to spend together and get to know each other. And then every quarter, we have a monthly meeting. And then I meet with the first year scholars every other week to kind of see how things are going, see what support they need, how they're adjusting to life at Santa Clara, which is difficult for a lot of them. There's a lot of excess and wealth here on campus. And so there's a struggle for a lot of these students to kind of make sense of that and make sense of their place here. The seniors I meet with once a month to kind of plan their transition out of the university and what they're going to do next. And then the sophomores and juniors meet once a month with one of our colleagues in campus ministry who provides a support system for them, a monthly reflection session. We also network our students with legal support that they need to apply for DACA or any other issues that come up surrounding their immigration. So we have a law center. We're connected with a community law center here that provides pro bono advice and counsel to the community, but to this group of scholars as well. The requirements of the scholarship are pretty minimal. We ask that the students maintain at minimum a 2.5 GPA, and that they engage with the Santa Clara community for at least 10 hours a week. So we have the first-year scholars volunteer at the reception desk of the Jesuit community as a way to connect with the men who are sponsoring their scholarships, and as a way to kind of create some other connections and relationships for any kind of issues that come up during their time at Santa Clara. And we ask them to volunteer to be residence assistants. We call them community facilitators, and which helps offset the cost of their attendance, but it also gives them a chance to be in a leadership role in the residential communities and then the community as a whole, the Santa Clara community. For future plans, like Michael was saying, we're trying to centralize the resources for our undocumented students on campus. And this is something that's come up from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, but it's also been kind of bubbling from the group of scholars themselves. They feel very supported and fortunate to have the opportunity they have through this scholarship program, and they want to make sure that other undocumented students on campus or other undocumented applicants know what is out there for them. And we are trying to kind of mobilize our alumni network a little more. And we're having our first reunion on April 24th as a way to connect that alum group, but also to connect the current scholars with alums of the university who have gone out and found their way. And Michael can speak to some of their successes after college, but our alums are doing very well. And I think that's a great thing for our current students to see that there are options and opportunities for them when they graduate from Santa Clara.
Yeah, I'd have to say, I think one of the things that our growing edge really is around the transition out of Santa Clara into the next phase of life. In some ways, energizing an alumni network seems to be really important, but given that we do this all out of this office, sometimes that can fall through the cracks. So people are good about staying in touch, but people are doing all sorts of things all over the place, whether they're teaching. We have two of our former students who went to law school immediately after being at Santa Clara, one at Stetson Law School in Florida, and one at the Santa Clara University Law School. Both of them recently were admitted to the California bar. So that's a big thing for our students, to be able to connect with them and to be able to sort of be part of a reflection on their journeys that led them to that place, which came with a lot of struggle. But I feel like we have a lot of those experiences, and really what we have to do is kind of energize that network a little bit more. And so that's basically what we're working on now. I think in terms of, in some ways, about 4 or 5 years ago, the scholarship, without a scholarship, kind of came out of the closet in some ways. We had a student who wrote an article on the scholars and on the scholarship, of course, with their permission, with my permission, but it was on the front page of the student newspaper. And so it really catapulted the conversation into the public sphere, because for much of that time, both the scholars and other people in the university were sometimes worried about what people would say about the number of undocumented students we had, who was supporting them, et cetera, et cetera. But this story actually helped everybody begin to talk about things quite openly. And so one of the great results of that was that students in various classes, particularly in the business school for a period of time, people who are in marketing and fundraising classes in their undergraduate life, who are responsible for sponsoring fundraising events as part of their curriculum, actually, several of them actually chose that without those scholarships to do fundraising events for. So these people that nobody ever knew, never thought that they would be interested, all of a sudden were sponsoring these events for these students after they read their stories and began to meet some of them. So we're in the process, I think, of the program, I think, is in a process of becoming more and more public and more actively reflecting on the experience that we've been having over the last 15 years. So I think that's about it.
Well, thank you, Michael and Greg. That was a great presentation, really a lot of great information. I'd like to turn it over now to Mark Kaczynski. Mark Kaczynski, PhD, is Father Michael I. English, S.J., Professor of Medical Ethics. He is also the director of the Newswanger Institute for Bioethics and Health Policy and the chairman of the Department of Medical Education at Loyola University Chicago Stritch School of Medicine. Mark worked with Dean Linda Brubacher, MD, to make Strict the first medical school in the nation to officially welcome applications from persons with DACA status. Strict has established itself as the national leader in extending hospitality to qualified students of DACA status, with 21 such students matriculating in the last 2 years. Mark, thank you for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure and honor to be with this distinguished group. I'm in a little different situation. I'm at the medical school at Loyola University Chicago, and I'll give you the punchline of my presentation here, which is really that, we always talk about barriers and difficulties and the problems we're having in trying to reach out and support Dreamer students. But the thing that I'm always trying to keep in mind and make sure we're always saying is that these students are incredible assets. They're incredible contributors to our communities. They're a precious resource that we're trying to steward. And so we're about stewarding it, and that means taking some risks that we're trying to do. Our story really starts along with the Fairfield Report. When the Fairfield Report was happening and people were talking to each other, we got an email from Loyola Marymount University about a student who was called the best student this professor had ever seen. Her name was Rosa. Incredible GPA. And all the things we'd want in a medical student, but she was a dreamer. And of course, this is 2011. This is before DACA was created. And so the question was, could she become a physician? And of course, she interested us because, in fact, the student is an asset to a medical school. We're in the business of taking the best and the brightest. She had outstanding academic qualifications. As they say with the Hurtado Scholarship, I think their tagline is that the student overcame extraordinary life circumstances. And of course, the added value of diversity that a person like Rosa would bring. This diversity contributes to social justice. And in our case, as a medical school, for patients, patients thrive better when they have culturally competent physicians, when they have physicians who look like people in their community as role models. They just get better outcomes. And so we felt that having a student like Rosa would be wonderful. And of course, for Rosa, the undocumented students, as we heard earlier about the hateful rhetoric in our political climate today, everybody's always talking about these students as takers, that somehow they're trying to take something that doesn't belong to them. But in fact, Rosa has this incredible ability to contribute to our communities and be a maker. And so we really wanted this student, but unfortunately, this was 2011, before the creation of DACA. And that, while Loyola University Chicago, on many levels, at the undergraduate level, takes students who are undocumented without DACA status, for us, that posed a problem in terms of the fact that we'd be making a physician who couldn't practice, because without a work authorization, she could not get licensed and go on to the next level of training, residency. And so we were stuck in hold for a little bit. And then came June 15th, 2012. DACA was created by the president. And by June 19th of 2012, Dean Linda Brubaker had said to me, let's go forward with this. And she asked me to make a web page that welcomed them. And we'd heard a little bit about transparency in this. We wanted to go forward very boldly with this. We wanted to say the word welcome. And so we have a page attached to our admissions page that says they're welcome, that presents our rationale, which puts very forward our Jesuit tradition, links all the information about it, and makes this as clear as possible that we wanted to be very public about this. we often use the phrase that we wanted to welcome them through the front door because we see this as a civil rights issue, right? And that imagery of front door as opposed to back door, where you sneak somebody in who's a person who is segregated from your society. Instead, we wanted this to be a social justice commitment of the school. And so we amended our eligibility criteria, created the web page, and of course, we needed a lot of financial aid because these students can't get federal student loans. And the average medical student graduates with $170,000 in federal student loans. We had a lot of money we had to make up. And so we didn't even know who to ask all the time. So by going forward publicly as possible, people could come to us. And so far, we've had several partners, including the state of Illinois at one point, Trinity Health, and some local organizations, one of which is called the Resurrection Project, that's helped us to create loan programs to supplement the school's ability to give financial aid to the students. And so by being bold, we've found partners, and that continues to be the case. It became a teachable moment in the life of the school, namely, a lot of people had a lot of questions, so we had to do a lot of talking about it. Right now, we have 7 Dreamers who are completing their second year of medical school. We have 14 more who are completing their first year of medical school, and we're preparing for another cohort. Jesuit education is about transformative education, and these students have changed us. Again, they are a tremendous asset to our community. It's reminded of us of our roots, where Catholic institutions were often the places that opened their doors when other places were saying no Irish need apply. We're recommitting to those kinds of values. The other students who were already here, when they heard what we were doing, wanted to educate their peers. So student leaders came forward. And so before our DACA students arrived, our Latino Medical Student Association, our Student National Medical Association, our Asian Pacific American Medical Student Association wanted to do forums for their peers. So they educated themselves and then started educating their peers. And so in general, we believe we are graduating medical students. We're creating physicians who know more about immigration in our immigrant communities than any medical students anywhere. As we continue on, people keep asking questions. Well, why don't they just get right with the law? Why don't they fix their status? So we now have in our curriculum a session on immigration law. We have new electives at the border with the sister school in Texas, where our students work in a detention center with children who are some of the border children who've come across. And it's a constant struggle for us because our partners who've helped us to find funding can only do so much. You know, when you have cohorts of 7 to 14 people, and you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars each year, each partner says, I can help with this cohort for 4 years, but we have to keep finding new ones. And so we're engaged in that effort full time. However, it really is an effort of joy. Our medical students, again, they're transformed in general, where all of our medical students are learning something. As you know, Congress keeps liking to vote to repeal DACA, which of course hasn't been going anywhere. But some of our students wrote a statement in support of our DACA students, really explaining how there's some things different about them. They bring cultural assets that will help diversify our physician workforce, but also that they're the same. They've competed on a level playing field for admission. And so they see a solidarity. The letter ends up saying to deny them this opportunity would be as unjust as it is to deny it to us. So our students are not just learning passively about immigrant communities, they're becoming advocates for them. And that's our whole student body. And so we're turning out a different kind of physician as a result. When I talk about the joy, as you know, United We Dream holds Educators Out Day in the fall. We're supposed to tweet your picture. This is our school's picture from this most recent year. Everybody wants into the picture because of how proud everybody is of these students and of our effort. People get mad at me if we hold the picture at a time when they can't make it. And as you see, our faculty is being transformed in this effort as well. These students, we were worried about their ability to handle this public nature of what we're doing here. There was apprehensiveness about day one. The people who were funding it wanted a press conference, and some of them stepped forward and were able to speak. If you go to our website, you can see the video from day one. They're also natural leaders. They're students who have overcome extraordinary life circumstances, so they naturally take up peer leadership roles. It's who they are. And so they're tremendous contributors to our community. And I just want to finish up by saying, you know, it's important for us to remember, I think, that we are not the change agents. They are the change agents. When that email arrived, we heard a cry for justice. what we do is bring that cry for justice to other people, and God willing, others hear it as well. And so they're the instigators of social change. We're allies. We self-educated. Because of my constant self-educating and talking about the plight of undocumented students, that email came to me. I used what I could. I connected them to other people. I did research. I tried to figure out how we could do this, and always encourage. I mean, I think one of the things we're afraid of is that if we talk too much about this, too many students will come to us and we won't be able to help them. That's okay. We do everything we can, but we need to be constantly encouraging them because they hear too much of negativity that things can't be done. And they're the kind of people who know that things can be done, and we need to keep telling them that. And so we share what we have, our social capital, by connecting them and encouraging them. And use what you have. Try to encourage, try to, some of us are educators, some of us are administrators, some are scholars doing research. We need to just keep using all of those hats, and the more alliances we build, the more resources we get. There's our student cohort recently. We have published on this in a variety of venues. And I will say, though, that as we're looking for next year's funding, we're where we were each of the last 2 years right now, which is that we don't have any funding solidified. We have partners we're talking to. We're working as hard as we can. And probably by the time orientation comes for these students, we'll have loan packages in place for them. But this is a faith-based institution, and it's a faith-based effort. And but it's about the best thing we've ever done. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think that that's great, and thank you for the references. We will definitely share that information with everyone in the group. I'd like to open up the discussion from all the attendees. If there's questions, I see in the chat, Kim, can we open that up and see if there's specific questions? And for the rest of you who either want to participate in actual the chat or open up your audio, your mic, so we can hear your questions, we welcome that opportunity at this time.
We have our first question from Colleen Lee at Spring Hill College, and that is, how will Dreamers be able to get their medical license?
Search. We discovered that most states actually have nothing in their laws that prevents the licensing board from giving a license to such people, as long as they have the qualifications to work lawfully, and that's what prevented us prior to DACA. But with DACA, these students do receive an employment authorization document, and they can apply for a social security number. So in the state of Illinois, that's technically everything they need, along with their medical education, to apply for a license for residency. And our state confirmed that because, as I say, the state was the first to step forward. Our state's infrastructure bank created a loan program that looks like a public health service loan program where they serve in an underserved area of the state of Illinois after graduation. And our medical license board had to come and testify that they would, in fact, license them. And it turns out that most states are similar to that. There's about 4 or 5 that we know have anti-immigrant laws on the books that prevent them from issuing a license. You can guess who those are. Those are typically like Georgia, Arizona, people who emulated that SB 1070 that was passed in Arizona. But most states will have no trouble licensing these students after graduation.
It looks like we have a question for Eva. How is the Dreamer Gala funded at Marquette? Through departmental funding?
Hello?
Okay.
This is the first year that we have the gala, and the diversity and inclusion offices, so my office and the Office of Institutional Diversity are the primary sponsors for the gala, along with the student organization, yes. Was that clear?
She said yes. And there's another question for you as well. When you mentioned the Dreamers group that is ran by the grad student, can you specify if it's a closed group? And are allies welcome to be a part of those group meetings?
We initially set up the group to be an open group for Dreamers and allies. However, by request of the Dreamers, we closed the group only to Dreamers. So in the future, we will be opening up another group that also involves the allies, but at this point, it's a closed group for only Dreamer students.
Okay, we have a question from Ria for the admissions in Marquette. Is someone designated for undocumented student recruitment and retention?
We have a staff member in the Office of Admission who does multicultural recruitment, Zuleika Rios. And Zuleika Rios and I work together. So as undocumented students enroll at Marquette and they come and visit Marquette University, we are able to transition those students from the admissions to student affairs and campus life.
So on our end here at St. Peter's, what we want to find out from any and all the participating institutions is how do you ascertain who is undocumented? When do you find that out? Is it from the application process? And how are you sharing that information within your institution? Because I know we.
This is Mark Kashevsky. You know, at the medical school level now, DACA has been added as a status of an immigration status, along with international student, legal permanent resident, U.S. citizen, and medical schools across the country on the common application are able to check that as well now. So we've had an influence nationally that way. On the undergraduate level, I don't believe they are identified. I know Joe Saucedo from Loyola is in the audience, maybe wants to say something in the chat box about that, but they're not identified up front. If they want to apply for the scholarships we have designated at the undergraduate level for students who are undocumented. And again, at the undergraduate level, it can be any undocumented since they don't have to have DACA status. At that point, they identify themselves when they want to apply for the scholarship, but I don't believe there's anything as part of the application process.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? How are you determining that at your universities?
Yes, this is Eva. For Marquette University, we have an option on the application process as students apply. So the options are permanent resident, U.S. citizen, and then other. So under other, students can select if they are international students or if they are domestic students born in another country. So typically undocumented students select other. And because that information is very protected by FERPA and a lot of the different laws, we're not able to run the list. Of course, we are, there's departments that are able to do so. The way I get connected with the students is through the admissions process. And at Marquette, we have developed a really good process where we are in constant communication with the Office of Admission, and we meet with a lot of those students. I would say the majority of those students. And our undocumented students are very good at finding the diversity and inclusion offices anywhere they go. So for Marquette, they typically walk through my office or they send me an email, they would like to meet with me and so on. I also work with a lot of the different colleges at Marquette, with the deans of the colleges, with chairs of the departments, and to be able to identify some of the students.
Thank you, Eva.
Yes.
I think our process at Santa Clara is similar to that of Marquette. Over here in the Jesuit community, we find out about the undocumented students after they have been accepted, and so they qualify to apply for the Hurtado scholarship. So that's where we're at with that.
Okay, and we have a question, or we have a statement from Loyola University Chicago. There is now an institutional scholarship designed for undocumented students, so applicants are made aware through the undergraduate admissions office. For those who disclose their status, they're also redirected to the Student Diversity and Multicultural Affairs to learn about the student support services available to them. And this is Joe Salcedo. Thank you, Joe. Because I think for us at St. Peter's, I think one of the biggest challenges we have is really not knowing who that population of students is. And we have various offices that provide support to different student populations, but we're not necessarily sharing that information amongst each other, mainly because we don't really know who these students are unless they're coming forward. And so, you know, for us, getting information from other universities and how they're overcoming that challenge is probably one of the things that we're really looking to overcome.
If I can just add to that, one of the things that the staff in my office were thinking about is working with institutional research to see if there's anything that we can do to be able to get a list of those students. Every year, the Office of Institutional Research sends over to us the incoming freshman class. So I think that having a conversation with the leaders within their office to see what is possible within FERPA and the legality of everything else, because it is very important to us to be able to have that information, because I do know that there are undocumented students who I'm not aware of. And I think it's so important for us to be able to help those students.
I fully agree with you, Eva. So we have a message from Molly at Holy Cross. So at Holy Cross, we have students identify their citizenship status on the Common App. These options include U.S. citizen, international students, DACA, permanent residents, or non-U.S. We also have relationships with various community-based organizations that identify different undocumented students they work with. Great. Thank you, Molly.
Oh, there's a question.
Is there a question?
She just added.
Oh, could folks share any stories of processes and resources they have utilized students get documented status or at or shortly after graduation? So resources that we've used to get documented status for our students.
Well, this is Mark. I'll say one thing is that students, if they can get in touch with a good immigration attorney and get services at a reasonable price, very often there's local organizations here in Illinois. We have the National Immigrant Justice Center that does counseling on a sliding scale. And very often the occasion to put them in touch with that attorney isn't just to get them screened right up front, but very often particularly students with DACA status want to travel abroad with opportunities from the university. And so we often counsel them to go set up an appointment with the attorney and do a pre-screen. And the attorney sometimes files a Freedom of Information Act request with USCIS to make sure there's no outstanding orders of deportation against them from, say, when they were a child or something and didn't realize such an order had been issued. Because that would be the one barrier. If they can travel abroad with advanced parole status, but if they're coming back in and there's an open order of deportation, it's a problem. So they then meet the attorney and they go through all this process. And typically as part of that, they start being screened for other possible ways that they can file for adjustment of status. And so they start on that path, and often that re-entry into the country through advanced parole is part of that process, because they our immigration attorneys have counseled us that if they came across the border when they were young and did not have were not granted entry through a visa or anything like that, that they will need that initial knock at the door, as an attorney describes it. So there's that's how we begin the process with many of them. And of course, for some of them, marriage, other kinds of family circumstances can lead to adjustment. But because of the complexities of immigration law, we're not great people ourselves as administrators to be counseling them. It is good for them to start that process through a pro bono attorney or somebody who works on a neo pro bono kind of sliding scale. And
if I can share with the rest of the group here, I recently developed a relationship with one of the consular offices of El Salvador. And one of the things that I learned from the Consulate General here in New Jersey is that they do have attorneys, immigration attorneys on staff. And one of the things that she was willing to offer us was their assistance pro bono through the relationship with her office. So while we may not be aware of that, it is another place that we can go to if we have those relationships with the Consulate General of any of these countries in our various cities, that these are places that we can go to get help for attorneys, pro bono, that type of stuff. So I think, Molly, you had another question of who pays for the attorney's fees, or are they typically able to get assistance pro bono? We're looking always, at least in the Center for Undocumented Students at St. Peter's, to try to find as much pro bono assistance as possible. And that's why I'm really going, extending out to other parts of the community. For example, I've also reached out to the New Jersey Hispanic Bar Association, because they are also tasked with the responsibility of providing pro bono services as part of their mission. So that's another resource. And as I said, the Consulate General from the various countries, we're in the metropolitan area, so we pretty much have every consulate office available to us, but it's a matter of building those types of relationships, and whenever possible, to offer discounted fees or try to negotiate with these attorneys so that they understand that these students oftentimes have very, very limited resources. And let's see, have you had any success reaching out to alumni who are practicing immigration attorneys? That's an idea we're interested in. That came from Molly at Holy Cross. Does anyone want to take that question? Alumni practicing immigration attorneys.
To this point, we haven't done that at Loyola. It's a fantastic idea. We have talked to some of our law school faculty who've assisted us. And as I say, locally, there are groups that will provide either pro bono assistance or on a sliding scale. And so our students are often charged $50 to $125 for a counseling session. But it's not, it is not exorbitant. And they shouldn't be paying thousands of dollars for an attorney.
And we have a message from Georgetown University. They are doing the following. At Georgetown University, we just created an agreement with local Catholic charity offices to provide DACA consultations to our students. We pay Catholic charities fee. This is all great. This is definitely the reason we wanted to come together today, because it's only through the sharing of this information that we can all learn from each other. Any other questions? Questions or contributions or suggestions? Go ahead.
So, not that any of us have crystal balls, but if we look to the future of the presidential election, if one of the Republican candidates wins, I am very concerned as to what's going to happen to DACA and immigration policy, and if we have any plans in place for what could be an impending disaster. Good question.
That was our distinguished Dr. Anna Brown at St. Peter's asking the question about what do you think will happen if a Republican is put in office in this next election related to DACA and immigration?
All right, I'll talk about that. This is Mark Kashevsky, and I will say that it's made our job a lot more difficult, because a year ago when we talked to funders, it was very much the common wisdom that DACA wasn't going away no matter what happened politically, and now funders are less apt to want to take risks. And so this year is going to be hard for us. But I don't believe DACA is going away no matter who wins, because I just think that it's it's too politically non-feasible for people to the government to have taken all this information and then use it against these students. But should something terrible happen, like we do have a candidate who's spouting hateful rhetoric actually win the presidential election, God forbid, several courses of action are open to us, right? We can petition for things like a presidential pardon, which is one possibility, that if all the universities speak in one voice, that these DACA students have in good faith participated in a presidential initiative, and the outgoing president should pardon them. That is one possibility that would regularize their status. And we then all have to immediately send them all to attorneys to pre-screen for any possibility we can get for adjusting to any other kind of deferred action, because there is a lot of options for deferred action out there. And so we're going to have to scramble individually with each of our students. And of course, as Catholic institutions, we really are committed to protecting them as much as we can. That would be an over our dead body kind of moment, right?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think I do have that same over my dead body, will you take one of these students away? But I think we really have to come together as universities and maybe not use that language, but something quite strong to say, to the effect, don't even think about it with our students, or anyone for that matter.
So you're talking about a united voice between all the Ignatian universities. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one question from Molly and another question from Georgetown University. So Molly asked, would anyone be able to share guidance about how to advise a student who asks whether she or he should disclose to a faculty member or other person on campus? So let's go with Molly's question first, and then we'll go to Georgetown's question. So guidance on disclosure to faculty of status.
Well, one thing at St. Peter's is that we have the stickers that faculty put on their campus, and administrators as well, saying who is kind of open or friendly to undocumented students. And also our faculty members have been trained in this kind of work through the Center for Undocumented Students. So I think there are enough faculty at St. Peter's who've, well, just about everybody really has signed on to be of assistance in this work. But I think it's important to clearly label your office or wear a button or something so that students know that they can come to you and be safe.
And I'll add to that Joe Saucedo, who we saw in the chat box a little while ago, does similar ally training here across Loyola University schools, and does have a sticker that you're able to put on our doors. But typically, students can find safety at least at Jesuit universities, at student affairs. They know, even though individual faculty members are always harder to predict, there are some central offices where at least they won't get a negative reception. That's fairly safe to say. And the other piece is that I think that there is a difference between DACA students and students who don't have DACA status, and that students who have who are undocumented without that status enjoy fewer protections and just need to be a little bit more careful and make sure they're talking with allies. Students who have DACA status really are just at a little less risk right now, and can feel safer with most faculty, I think.
Okay. So the next question is anyone doing any work or advocacy on the
DACA.
Oh, on DACA
or DAPA.
Or DAPA.
Supreme Court decision.
Supreme Court decision.
Hard to manipulate his mouth.
And that one was from Georgetown University.
Take it.
It's the gray part on the bottom. Right there. Slide it up. The little bar. There you go. Down more. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Is anyone doing any work or advocacy on the DACA Supreme Court decision? I know we're not here.
No.
Any takers on that question?
It must be no.
Hi,
Yeah.
this is
This is Miriam from University of San Francisco. I'm one of the undocumented students here, and I'm part of MECHA. So we're doing Undocu Week next week because we also proposed to Student Senate a scholarship fund to reallocate $4 of tuition per year for an undocumented student fund. But throughout our Undocu Week, we're also talking about the DACA and DAPA decision, as well as AB 2009. It's a legislation here in California that will have dream resource centers in both the UCs, Cal States, community colleges, and public high schools. So that's our outreach strategy to inform our student population, faculty, and staff doing Undocu Week.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, great.
Okay, so I don't think we have any more takers for that one. So we have another question or another statement. Can you go up just a little, Anna? Just a little, there we go. At LMU, there's a student organization for undocumented students, Resilience. It's supported by Student Affairs, and while the privacy of each student involved in the organization is important, the organization as such has a high profile on our campus and runs events. When I think of the issue of being able to identify undocumented students in order to be sure to get the assistance they need, I think the public profile of Resilience does a lot to encourage the undocumented students themselves. We have a public incident related to undocumented students this week, and it was published at latimes.com. So she provided the link there. And then Molly, a statement to the whole group. Here it is. Loyola Marymount University wall with pro-immigrant slogans is defaced. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so go back to the chat.
Trump, what do they say?
No, go to the next tab.
Oh.
Go down to the camera, maybe. No, that's my email.
Sorry.
There.
Here?
Yeah. There we go. Okay, and then Molly Brown, I think either a statement or a question. Perhaps there's some merit in asking AJCU to file an amicus brief.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Right, okay. And then Bob Urtel from LMU. I apologize if I messed up your last name. We have a series of events this week called Migration is Beautiful, No Human Being is Illegal. Bob, what type of events are you doing for the Migration is Beautiful?
His microphone.
Okay, let's see. Kim, can you unmute his phone or his microphone?
They did. Okay. Hi, everyone. My actual work is continuing education, and I have not been to any of these events. I was planning to go to tomorrow's event. Anyway, yeah, there was a rally. There was an information session, Get the Facts. There was, last night, Black and Brown Solidarity joined a facility discussion on the police brutality and interethnic allyship. Last night, We Are Not Illegals. Listen to your fellow undocumented LMU students and their allies tell their stories. And tomorrow we have a campus-wide demonstration against immigration injustice.
Okay. Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
I just want to compliment LMU and the stuff Bob's talking about, because I do think that our best strategy at this point is to continue to talk about what are the contributions that are made by people, dreamers, by immigrants to our society, to our communities, that because, you know, to try to debate on the terms that are being set by people who are focusing on words like illegal is just it's a no-win, you know. And the But we need to just keep talking about the fact that these are members of our community who are contributors, who are assets, and by keeping our laws the way they are, we essentially restrict the contributions they make to our community. You know, we continually use the metaphor of Jim Crow laws, that our immigration laws have essentially become laws to segregate members of our community permanently from opportunity. And when we give them opportunity, we all benefit. We all prosper more by it. And I think we need to stay on the offensive with that.
I want to share something to piggyback on what you just said. I recently had a conversation with the president of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce here in New Jersey, and he told me he actually has data that he's collected on the financial contributions of undocumented entrepreneurs in the state of New Jersey. And we're actually going to be putting together a forum at the United Nations where he will be presenting that data for exactly that reason that you mentioned, which is we really need to put forward the information about the contributions that these undocumented persons have on our economy and on our state. So, you know, there's so much negative rhetoric. We really need to be the ones communicating the positive impact of their contribution. And I think there's another question from Molly. Does anyone have a system in place for undocumented students qualified to attend their institutions, but they cannot financially fund? Is there an acknowledgement of their capability to succeed at the institution, but unfortunately the funding is not there?
Well, this is Mark again. I could say at a couple of different levels. At the medical school, we make the admissions decision first. We make that completely independent of the financial aid decision, so they apply and are accepted or rejected on their academic merits. And so once they get in, then we try to find the funding. And so right now we have 13 Dreamers admitted for next year. To our medical school. We have no funding in place yet. We're working, again, around the clock with our partners to try to get something in place. Hopefully, we will have funding to offer all of them by the time we get to orientation, but it's quite possible we will not. And so in which case, we would then offer them, those who we do not have funding for, a deferral to next year, and they'd be on top of the priority list for any funding we were able to get then. And at the undergraduate level, as Joe Saucedo mentioned, we have several scholarships, but we have a lot of undocumented students who apply. It's quite possible somebody could get in and not end up with one of those scholarships. And then it's up to them how they want to try to negotiate their education at that point, part-time or in some other way. We also have a junior college here at Loyola that started this year, a Root Bay College, that fortunately has been able to fund a significant number of undocumented students. And I believe they have 20-some undocumented students there. To my knowledge, they have not yet had an undocumented student they can't fund. But it can always happen because, again, if we're putting our flag out there, if we're saying we're supportive, lots of people are going to apply. It could happen that we can't support somebody who needs the support. But that's part of the risk we take. We're in this journey with them. That's what I say about being an ally. We have to keep encouraging them. We will sometimes have to say, we're sorry, we don't have anything, but hang in there because the things that brought them this far can get them further, and we want to keep encouraging them.
And Mark, just to kind of piggyback on that, at St. Peter's, it's the same thing. We admit them, and then we look to the financial aid funding to see, you know, where we can get private funds, whether it's a St. Peter's scholarship. We do have an alum that started a scholarship for undocumented students, but that is only good for juniors and seniors. Part of what my office is working on right now is private funding to add to that scholarship so that we can provide it beginning freshman year and obviously to sophomores so that we have full coverage for the 4 years. So that's, you know, some of the stuff that we're doing, but we recognize that that funding has to come from private sources because neither the state nor the federal government is going to provide us that. So we're currently soliciting funds from private organizations and private foundations who are in favor of helping our students.
And I wanted to add, in addition to that, it's also very important that the admissions office, when they work with undocumented students, that is not just another number. And I know most of our institutions don't see it that way, but I think that we always have to come from the perspective that what else can we do? If that undocumented student is not able to attend or institution, then what else? What is option B? When I used to work in the Office of Admission, I would actually sit down with the entire family or the student, and if they couldn't afford to come to Marquette University, I would also take the time to talk a little bit about option B and option C, whether that is at another institution or community college and some of the other options. What we have here in Milwaukee is that I am pretty well connected with a lot of the institutions in Milwaukee, particularly the UW system and so on. So I know a lot of the people working in student affairs and admissions. So when we're working with different students, we're able to also call some of our colleagues and say, listen, you know, there's a student here, the student applied to your institution, can I refer the student over to you? And be an advocate that way, because, you know, the fact that they can come to our institution, that doesn't mean that it ends right there. There's always, you know, something more that we can do as part of our social justice mission.
Hi, I don't know if you can see it in everybody's screen. It's a calendar of events of MECHA.
Yeah, put the line sign, there we go.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah, like I was saying, this is our DocuWeek calendar of events. This is what we're doing this upcoming week with MECHA's Movimiento Científico de Aztlán. Like you see, we have things like student mass, having passive programming, dealing with art. We are having a film screening with the School of Law. We're having a panel with undocumented women in higher education. As well as something we call Chisme Comida, where all Latinos, like it's a space for Latino students to come in the intercultural centers. We are promoting our resolution to have a undocumented student fund, scholarship fund, and then faculty and staff are coming together to talk about how better support undocumented students. And then on Saturday, we're having a lecture in the School of Education. So we try to partner up with a lot of campus departments and other schools, the School of Law, the School of Education, and with residence life in our hall. So it's just a small, it's the first time we're doing it, and we're really happy that we got so much support from everybody. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing, this is great.
Are you able to scroll down on the screen a little bit to show us a little more of it?
Yeah, because we only see up to April 12th.
Can you?
Ria, can you move your mouse down? There we go. Great. Chisme y comida.
Chisme.
Chisme, gossip.
Gossip
and food.
Can we just go a little bit more down so I can see the Facebook
Link?
Yeah.
Can you scroll down a little bit more? Partnerships include housing, residential education. We got their website. Social media, Undoc Week, USFCA. We have to follow them.
Like, I'm doing it right now.
Okay.
Should get that. Should have it sent to us.
Yes, absolutely.
Read it.
Yeah, we can send it out to everyone.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't unmute it.
This is Kim from Ignatian Solidarity Network. Sharing the Undocumented Week at USF got me thinking about, on a student level, there's a lot of student activist groups at each of the Jesuit campuses. But I was wondering if any of the students on this call or ones that work with the student organizations have seen campuses working together for sharing ideas. Like, seeing all the activities that happened at Undocumented Week is great. And I'm just wondering if other schools are kind of pulling from each other in terms of ideas for programs.
I think schools could go through the Ignatian Solidarity Network. That's how we usually find out what everybody's doing all together.
Right.
This is Deanna House from AJCU. We have a listserv for the AJCU Conference on Diversity and Equity, and it's for the campus diversity officers and folks who have a lot of work to do with students and with these kinds of issues, and they are fantastic for sharing information with each other. If anybody's interested in learning more about the conference or about that particular listserv, just please write to me. I just put down my email address.
Thank you. dhouse@ajcunet.edu.
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions as we start to wind down? And before I forget, because I did forget, I do also want to thank the Ignatian Solidarity Network for all their help, because to be honest with you, without their help, this event would not have been possible, from sending out the emails, invitations, to our actual webinar today. So thank you, Kim, and your organization for everything that you have done to support our program today. So if there are no further questions, what I'd like to do to end this is again, thank you all for coming. Kim, I know you said that this is recorded and archived. How will we be able to access the archive?
We will post this to YouTube, and I will be able to send it to the group by tomorrow afternoon.
Great, fantastic. The other thing that I will be doing within the next 24 hours is sending out a survey to all our participants, because obviously we'd like to continue to share this type of information and host another webinar like this one, but I need your feedback in terms of what other types of issues we should be talking about maybe for the next one. And the last thing I want to do, and I would be remiss not to include Father Rocco, who is with us here today. He came to St. Peter's in 2010 and currently serves as our Director of Campus Ministry, but he recently was promoted to Vice President for Mission and Ministry. And I'd like him to end our meeting today. Please, Father Rocco, could you please?
Sure. Hello, everyone. And I was jotting down a lot of words as I was listening to everyone sharing in this wonderful moment of surely Ignatian solidarity and networking about something that's so important to all of our schools. But I jotted down these words, and they're so Ignatian and at the very heart of our mission as Jesuit educators: journey, inspiration, transformation, passion, desire, joy, encouragement, and mission. So maybe I can end just by with a little prayer as we consider the gifts, the real gifts our dreamers are to our universities and colleges across the nation, and how they bring joy and inspire us to the modus of social justice and social action. And perhaps what I was hearing too, inspiring us to a little more political awareness and political voice at this time of approaching elections. So let us pray. Good and gracious God, you've gathered us today in a conversation around what is most sacred and most precious to us, the gifts of life that are before us, who are called dreamers. They dream and they inspire, and they bring us along to a greater consciousness of your call to love, to serve, and to accompany. Help us in all of our places of ministry as Ignatian-inspired, Jesuit-driven, Catholic at the base, companions of these students. And may we continue our networking as Ignatian Solidarity Sisters and Brothers in the near future to keep the conversation and the insights and the imagination of how to best serve and to best inspire not only these students, but all those out on our campuses. And we ask these blessings and graces through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, everyone. Kim, do you have any closing remarks?
Just to echo the thank you on behalf of the Ignatian Solidarity Network as well. I mean, I think Father just mentioned that this was such a great representation of networking and what ISN is all about. So thank you for all the work you continue to do. And this call will be, it is being recorded and will be available by tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.